there, you'll see that $30 is the price you would pay to come to a concert here live. Right now, because we're live stream only, we're relying solely on donations to keep this series going. We've done very, very well with donations from Friday's concert and our concerts back in September. Thank you so much for your generosity, those of you who watched then. And as a direct result of those donations, we've been able to upgrade our live stream equipment. So as you might notice, we actually have 4 camera angles functional today. Actually, Tate, could you maybe just demonstrate those four angles? So I don't know which camera you're seeing me from now, but we've got cameras on either piano. We have a higher up camera, and we've got this one. So thank you so much for your generosity, and we'll be able to continue to present concerts here, pay our artists, and keep things going if you're able to donate generously. Finally, the media player itself is just in the middle of the screen. You can make it go to your full screen if you hover over it with your mouse and click on the small square in the bottom right-hand corner of the media viewer. That will make the concert go to full screen. Make sure you're listening at a volume that you're comfortable with. We are adjusting the volume on our end, so you shouldn't have to have your volume all the way up at the highest level, but if you do, you'll get a very extreme experience from this indeed, which I guess some of you might be into that. But just adjust your volume levels accordingly. I say a big thank you to all of our sponsors before every concert that we host here in person. And I've been doing that since we started hosting concerts in this space 10 years ago. But now I have to say an even bigger thank you to our sponsors because, of course, 2020 has not been an easy year for anybody, but it's been an especially difficult year in the arts. And when this pandemic hit the world back in March and we were locked down with no certainty about what our future was going to look like as an organization, not a single one of our 2020 season sponsors withdrew their support. So I just can't thank you enough for continuing to believe that we were going to be able to produce concerts here as we're now doing, and your support has also meant that we've been able to purchase the equipment that we're using now to bring these concerts to you. So I would like to say a special thank you to each and every one of our sponsors. I'm going to start with Mark and Deb Rondell and the Rondell Wealth Management Group at RBC. Mark and Deb have been supporters of the series since the beginning. Mark, I think, was especially keen on the idea of watching this concert from his couch. I think he did that for the concert back in September. So Mark, if you're watching this afternoon, I really hope you enjoy the couch experience once again. A big thank you to Marg Campbell, who's been a supporter of the series for a few years. Marg has never missed a concert here in person. She's been at every single concert that the series has put on since she became a sponsor. And so this weekend's concerts are the first 2 that she hasn't been here in person for. Marg, I believe you're watching this afternoon, so I hope that your home setup is as comfortable as the chair you normally take at the top of our stairs here. A big thank you and warm welcome to Dasha Schenkman, who I know is watching this concert from her home in London, England. Dasha, you and I have been emailing for years trying to figure out a time when you might be able to come and view a concert here live. I know it's not quite the same thing, but welcome to your first concert at Pontiac Enchante, and I hope that you get a sense of what it is we do here through this. So Dasha, a huge thank you for your support and a warm welcome to today's concert. A big thank you to the Desjardins Bank for their support. They've been supporters of the series and have helped us make numerous facility upgrades since we started 10 years ago. So thank you to everybody at Desjardins. Same goes for Norton Rose Fulbright. Thank you to that whole team for their support of our series and everything they do to make our concerts possible. And finally, to Bob and Sandra Barber, who live locally and have been great supporters of the series for a few years and have been sponsors for the past few as well. Sandra and I had a conversation a few weeks ago about the drawbacks of live stream concerts. And Sandra, I agree, if I could have the whole audience here in person, I would do that. But this is better than nothing, and your support has meant that we're able to do this. So I really hope that you're enjoying this concert from just down the road from your couch as well. So again, a big thank you to all of our sponsors and supporters. Thank you so much for your support of this series. If you were here in person, I would say that if you'd like to stay in touch with us, the best way to do so is to leave your email for us on a piece of paper at the back of the hall. Obviously, that's not quite the way things work now, but it's easier for you to do that from your current positions than it was when you were here. All you have to do is you'll see at the top of the screen on our website, there's a yellow button saying join our emailing list. Click on that button. leave us your email. That is by far the best way to keep in touch with us and find out what concerts we have coming up. We send out regular emails saying what the next concert is, where you can book tickets, things like that. It's especially important now because we don't know until quite close to our next concert whether we're going to be able to offer in-person tickets or just online viewership. So please join our emailing list. That's the best way to keep up with us. Another thing you can do if you use Facebook is to follow our Facebook page. We also post updates there, and we will let you know what's happening via that page as well. So just search Pontiac Enchante on Facebook and like our page to receive those updates. Putting on a concert during a pandemic is a real challenge, and a challenge that doesn't happen without the help and support of many people. So I would just like to mention a few people that have made today's concert possible. Organizations as well. And so I'd like to start with the Mill Road Community Center in Old Chelsea, who have very generously lent us their lighting equipment. You might notice that I'm very well illuminated right now. You can't see these lights, but there are two very, very good sets of purpose-specific performance lighting on either side of me. So thank you to Mill Road for letting us use that setup to really improve the visual aspect of today's performance. You might also know or notice that the picture quality that you're seeing on your screens right now is very high. You could have the best camera equipment, the best computer equipment in the world, and if you don't have high-speed internet access, you will not be able to produce a high-quality live stream concert. So I would just like to say a big thank you to Cliff Bellis and Pioneer Wireless, who provide internet to this part of Canada, for all the work they've done to upgrade our internet speed here. It's one thing to provide high-speed internet in the city, but it's a totally different thing to do that in the countryside. So Cliff, thank you so much for the work you've done to enable us to present our concerts at the quality that we're able to do so now. A big thank you as well to the Ottawa Steinway Gallery and Jennifer Messer. Finding a space where you can rehearse on two pianos is not that easy. We can do so here, but Suren and I also wanted to be able to rehearse in Ottawa. So Jennifer very kindly allowed us to use the gallery and two of the many pianos they have there. So Jennifer, thank you for being so gracious and giving us that time to rehearse. Some of you may have watched the concert on Friday night. If you're back again today, welcome back to the hall. You might notice that even as I'm speaking, the sound quality is extremely high, and you might remember that we had a little error with sound during the last concert. I am extremely grateful to Ross Murray, who's come today, has given us his Sunday to improve our sound quality. He's brought his professional audio setup to us. So Ross, thank you so much for being here today and giving us this real HD sound experience. It's wonderful to have you. And I can't wait to play for you with that kind of sound output going out to you. So Ross, thank you so much for what you've done for us today. You're going to see a man sitting beside Suren as he plays, turning pages. And page turners are often underrated in the music world. Nobody quite realizes how difficult that job is to do, especially when you're playing two piano music and there are constantly 4 staves of music going by. There's a lot of pages. And as you'll notice, the music we're playing is not exactly slow. So there are moments where that person is going to be getting a serious workout. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Dakota Martin, who has joined us today. Dakota is a professional flautist, but during the pandemic has retrained as a brewmaster with the Perth Brewery. So Dakota is taking his day off from brewing beer to come and page turn for us. So I'm very grateful to him. Brewing beer is a long process. He's going to be brewing again from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. So a massive thank you to him for giving us his day off. And do not screw up the page turning. A final thank you to my parents, who have allowed us to use this facility to present these concerts. Back in September, we had a live audience here. We had 25 people in the hall. Bringing people to your property during a pandemic is not the easiest thing to do, and it takes a lot of confidence that the safety measures in place are going to work. So a big thank you to my parents, for Peter and Debbie, for allowing us to use this facility and continue to use it during these troubling times. Actually, final thank you to Tate Becke, who you're not going to see. He's my brother and co-director of today's series. Tate is managing all of the visuals. So anytime you see a camera transition, that is Tate's artistic eye deciding when to move from one camera to another. And his technical knowledge and expertise has allowed us to create this setup. We built a computer specifically for live streaming that Tate had the technical knowledge and expertise to build. So thank you to Tate for all the skills that he brings to the table and for his great co-directorship of this series. I'm going to welcome my partner in crime, Suren Berry, onto the stage in a minute, but you might notice on the website, this is the first time that we appear as duo Octavian. We have appeared as a piano duo in this series many times before, but this is the first time we show up with an official name. And I wanted to just tell you why we have that name. Groups have names for a variety of reasons. Sometimes there's no reason at all. But we thought very long and hard about this name and why should we have a name and what should that name be. So I wanted to share that information with you. I recently completed my doctorate on the music of Richard Strauss, and Suren recently completed his doctorate on the music of Mozart and Mozart's keyboard improvisation style. The connection there is that Richard Strauss was an avid Mozartian. He is one of the main reasons that we think Mozart is a good composer now. In the early 20th century, late 19th century, Mozart was not necessarily a highly regarded composer, and Strauss did a lot to publicize his music and to revitalize it, in some cases even recompose it for the audiences of his time. So something that we like to do as a duo is to take music that pre-exists and to sort of make it our own. You might remember, some of you were here for a performance last year where we played our own arrangement of Brahms's Requiem for 2 pianos and choir. So we took Brahms's orchestration and transformed that into a piece for 2 pianos. And as a duo, that really is an integral part of our identity. We like to rework things, make them our own, and make them work for today's audiences. So that, in a sense, was what Richard Strauss was doing with Mozart's music. Strauss's opera Der Rosenkavalier is in many ways an early 20th century reworking of Mozart's opera The Marriage of Figaro. And there's one character in that opera named Octavian, who is a reworking of Mozart's Cherubino. And we thought that the name Octavian was nice because it had resonance with the idea of an octave on the piano, and that character also represented the sort of renewal and rebirth of older music infused with new ideas. So that is why we are called Duo Octavian. So with that, I would like to welcome the other half, I'd like to say better half, of Duo Octavian to the stage. Here is Suren Berry.
Hi everyone, thank you so much, Carson. I'm really looking forward to what is round 2 of this program, and thank you so much for joining from far and wide. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the sorts of things that we listen for in performance as classical musicians, because the term classical music is so impossibly vast. It encompasses Baroque music, it encompasses Renaissance music, it encompasses serial, weird 20th century music. So what differentiates the first piece as a classical piece from the 2 following pieces on the program? So I would say that if you're going to listen for anything in this piece, in the Arensky, you're going to be looking for like a kind of a charm, definitely some kitsch, maybe a few slightly cheesy, corny elements, but it was salon music. It was written in the 19th century to sort of to delight audiences, to not necessarily make them think too hard about anything. And so it appealed to cultural tropes that prevailed at the time. So there's the second movement's a waltz, the third movement's is a polonaise. These are dances that would have been popular, that people would have understood, but that sound slightly antiquated to modern ears. So what I would sometimes compare it to is like you're listening to an old movie, and there's all those old-timey accents that are really quaint, but that you can't help but grin a little bit when you listen to it. So I would say that this piece is a very charming, really stylish, effortlessly played as well. Like a really graceful on-ramp to what is a much more heavy-hitting program immediately after. So I hope you enjoy.
always kind of want more sound than that at the end of a piece like that, but we'll just imagine that you're applauding furiously wherever you are. So thank you all very much for listening. That was Anton Arensky's first suite for two pianos in G minor, Opus 15. I realized that I forgot to mention in my introductory remarks that if any of you who have not physically been here before hear any noises that maybe are not noises that you'd expect to hear during a concert, like the sound of a horse neighing, for example, do not be alarmed. Those noises are natural in this space. You might not know, but below us here is a fully functional equestrian barn. So there's about 25 horses below the cameras right now. So if you hear a horse noise, that's just part of this experience. And we're told the horses like the music, but sometimes they tell us otherwise by banging on the ceiling. So just be prepared if those noises occur. The second piece on today's program, or the second set of pieces really, is Sergei Rachmaninov's Symphonic Dances, which is a piece in 3 movements. The Symphonic Dances were written in 1940, and they were the last major composition that Rachmaninoff completed in his lifetime. He died a few years later in 1943. And when you listen to these pieces, they give me the sense that they're not just the last pieces that he wrote, but the last pieces in a whole tradition of composition that Rachmaninoff felt himself to be the last example of. The Russian Romantic school of symphonic composition. So in this piece, he refers back to his own earlier pieces, and he refers to music by other composers in this tradition, composers like Mikhail Glinka, like Balakirev, like Pyotr Tchaikovsky, Anton Rubinstein, and then sees himself really as the end of that. So this piece, in a way, is the summary of his life's work and the summary of this whole symphonic tradition. So a good example, early in the piece, or in the first movement, there are quotes from his first and second symphonies. His first symphony was a catastrophic failure at its premiere. The conductor was Alexander Glazunov, who we have later found out was drunk at that performance, which is never a good way to have a world premiere go. So Glazunov was drunk, the piece was very difficult, the orchestra totally fell apart, and it was a disaster. And his viability as a composer was questioned. It wasn't clear that anybody thought that he was going to be worth anything as a composer. And this had a huge psychological impact on him. He wasn't able to compose for years after that disastrous performance. Thankfully recovered and gave us some of the most beloved music of the early 20th century. So he sort of recalls the theme from his first symphony as a sort of affirmation that actually things kind of worked out. Like I said, there are quotes from his second symphony in there as well. And he also refers more broadly. There are not direct quotes, but little reminiscences of music by Rimsky-Korsakov. Importantly, there are a few references to church music, and one reference in particular that I wanted to highlight for you, just so you're looking out for it. In the last movement, there is a very clear theme through the movement that is an ages-old piece of plain chant called the Dies Irae. Dies Irae plain chant. Let me just play you that tune. So you might have heard that before. It features in lots of music throughout the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. Hector Berlioz uses that in his Symphonie Fantastique. And Rachmaninoff used it throughout his life. It features in so many of his pieces, sometimes in very obvious ways, other times in very subtle ways. You don't even know it's there until you look for it. It comes out very obviously in Symphonic Dances. And that theme is always related to the idea of death. So he's really grappling with a pretty serious subject in this piece. And I was told that in the manuscript score, there's a moment of real triumph near the end that we will attempt to make very, very clear for you. Apparently at that moment in the score, he wrote the word hallelujah. So he really saw this piece as sort of his final struggle, and as his summation of his great life as a musician and a composer. So here is Sergei Rachmaninoff's 3-movement Symphonic Dances. Thank you. Thank you all very much for listening to Rachmaninoff's Symphonic Dances. Before we play the Stravinsky, Suren and I probably both need an injection of some kind of caffeine after that. And so we've prepared something for you. Rather than just letting you sit in silence while we collect ourselves, we filmed an interview with Maestro Dmitri Alexeev, who is the Russian pianist that has transcribed the version of Stravinsky's Firebird that you're about to hear. Mr. Alexeev lives in London. We talked to him in his home in London via Zoom. He is one of the world's most famous pianists. He won the Leeds International Piano Competition in the 1970s and has been touring and performing around the world ever since. So we were very fortunate. I knew Mr. Alexeev when I was a student in London. I got wind that he had been working on an arrangement of Stravinsky's Firebird. We've performed his arrangement of a concert suite from Gershwin's Porgy and Bess. And when I heard that the Firebird was in the works, I started asking some questions. And I said, do you think we might be able to borrow that piece from you? So we're very happy that today's performance, sort of in tandem with Friday's performance, is the Canadian premiere of this arrangement. We couldn't be happier to be giving the premiere. So in advance of listening to the piece, we'd like you to hear from Maestro Alexeev, and we had some questions for him about the piece, about his process of putting it together. So I hope you enjoy the interview, and we'll see you in 15 minutes. Thank you. Suren and I are very happy to be joined right now by Maestro Dmitri Alexeev, who has made the arrangement of Stravinsky's Firebird suite that you're going to be hearing next on the program. Mr. Alexeev is joining us from his home in London, and we're very pleased that he agreed to answer a few questions that we had about his arrangement of the Firebird. So, Mr. Alexeev, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Do you want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah. So, as you know, we've Carson and I have played your Porgy and Bess concert suite, the first concert suite, which I think we played five or six years ago.
Yeah.
So you've transcribed a second suite from that opera as well, and now you're working on Stravinsky's Firebird, or you've worked on Stravinsky's Firebird, and we're wondering what drew you to the Firebird, especially given that there's these three versions. It has this rich history. What was it about Firebird specifically that you thought needed to be said in two pianos?
Well, first of all, I think it's great music. It's one of the Stravinsky masterpieces and one of the masterpieces of the whole 20th century music. That's the main reason. The reason for occasion, it was I was doing the duo piano recital in Poland for the Chopin and his Europe Festival a couple of years ago. And I was looking for something new. So I played with Nikolai Demidенko, and in this program we included some pieces we played before, some pieces of more or less standard repertoire. And I was thinking about to include in this program something fresh, something new. And the idea of Firebird came to me. Then it was quite a choice to choose because there's different versions of this piece. There is a full ballet. There are three different suites of actually very different timing and very different pieces included in these suites. So I choose to do the last version of Firebird, which was made by Stravinsky in 1945. Partly because I think it was really impossible and really not very not much sense to do the whole ballet. After all, it's still ballet with the story and the orchestra and all that. From the other hand, the suite of 1911 and 1919, to my opinion, is a bit short. So the last suite of 1945. It's a bit longer, and it does include lots of fantastic music from the original ballet. Then when I was working on this suite, actually it was very busy time for me, and I was traveling a lot during this period. So most of the score I wrote, I was doing in the planes, in hotels, in trains. So I mean, in many places, many countries in the world, which was difficult enough. But also, I chose this last suite because it, to my opinion, it's the most sophisticated. So somehow Stravinsky combined his early version of very young composer. He was, what, 28 or something like that when he wrote it, with his much more mature style, much more sophisticated, the orchestra he used is much more economical. He used it in a very, very clever way. But also there is a lot of changes he brought to this last version. Changes of harmonies, changes of rhythm, and instrumentation, of course. So for me, it was really, really interesting work on this score. Also, I have to say, besides the practically full version, the full ballet, complete ballet, suite the 1911, suite 1919, suite 45, there is another version, which is piano reduction, which Stravinsky did together with his original score. And surprisingly, I found that there is also lots of different things compared to the original orchestral score. So some of it I did include in my version. Okay. So basically, what I did, the base of it, it's orchestral score of suite 1945, with some inclusion from original ballet and piano reduction, original Stravinsky piano reduction. So it's kind of a combination of all that.
Actually, I wanted to ask you something. You mentioned that you spent most of your time working on your arrangement while you were traveling. And so therefore you were away from the piano when you were making your transcription. So I wanted to ask just about the process of going, in a way, the opposite of what you were just talking about Stravinsky doing, going from orchestral score back to piano score, and just how you kind of envision that and how you worked through that. Because I first of all, actually, my assumption would have been that you actually did it at the piano. So I'm surprised and amazed to hear that you didn't. And so, yeah, what is your process when you're working from orchestral back to piano?
No, I never tried to analyze actually, but as far as I understand, well, it's a complicated process. First of all, I'm writing all the notes.
Yeah.
From the original score, whatever it is. And then I try to arrange it for piano to try to make pianists feel comfortable enough to be able to play it. And sometimes it's not easy. Also, it's true that most of the time I was out of piano, but I always check the final result with the piano. So I cannot say I'm writing without piano. Piano is really, for me, it's very, very important. Just to check and to hear the actual piano sound.
Would you go like in that first stage when you're basically transcribing all of the orchestral notes onto a piano score? Are you doing that into a score for one piano, or do you immediately go to two pianos, or does the division between the pianos come later on?
Generally speaking, it's for two pianos.
Okay.
Straight away.
Right away.
I guess. Yeah, right away. I guess sometimes I can make a simplified version. Okay. For one piano, from time to time. Yeah.
And then once you've actually finished that process and you've kind of got your, at least a final draft of the score, how much do you change what you've written when you start rehearsing? Is there a lot of rewriting or rethinking that you do when you're in rehearsal process, or is it usually, do you usually just rehearse and finish with what you've got?
No, there's a lot of changes.
Okay.
It's always a lot of changes during the rehearsal, even after the concerts. And what I've heard, even the greatest composers did the same with their great pieces. So they changes during the rehearsal and after the concert. When they actually hear the sound, how it sounds, they make some changes.
Yeah.
Even I know it from first-hand. Rostropovich told me it was the same thing with Shostakovich and Prokofiev.
Okay, so this is Rostropovich working with both of those composers in person.
Yes.
Yeah, that's some nice first-hand knowledge to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so actually, speaking of I guess somewhat first-hand knowledge of a composer, we know that Stravinsky left Russia in 1914 and made his whole life and career away from Russia. He was in France and in the United States. And then he made a very famous sort of comeback tour to Russia in 1962. And I know that in 1962, you were a student in Moscow. So you were present when he came back to Russia after being away for so long. Do you have memories of that time? What do you remember from that visit that Stravinsky made?
Yes, it was a very famous event because for many, many years, music by Stravinsky was practically forbidden in the Soviet Union because of different reasons, because he was emigre and because his music basically was not acceptable for so-called social realism, which was politically correct in Soviet Union. So shortly before he came, I think it was his certain jubilee. Don't quite remember what year was it. The Soviet government sent official delegation to Stravinsky, to Los Angeles. Few officials, few Russian very respected musicians. Basically, it was invitation. They brought an invitation for Stravinsky to come back to Russia. And he accepted, not without hesitation. I read some of his letters. He was not quite sure, but finally he decided to go, and he went. He was in Moscow and in Leningrad then, St. Petersburg, doing few concerts. So I was still in my music school, so I was unfortunately not able to go to get the tickets for this concert. But I remember I was, during this concert, evening concert, I was passing by, and it was very hot weather, and the big windows of the Great Hall of Moscow Conservatory were open. So I could hear something. I was standing just outside. It's not quite the same thing like being in a hall, but still I remember very clearly that. And these concerts were recorded. I still have very old, long playing records of this concert. Conducted by the composer.
Yeah, that's an amazing story.
I find this absolutely fascinating to hear all these firsthand accounts. I can only speak for myself, but I feel that throughout our education, we don't necessarily get to connect to the music that we play in this sense, to really connect with the storied tradition of it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all that.
Okay.
I had one more question for me and Carson. As you might know, we've been doing a bit of arranging ourselves, and we'd like to get into doing more two-piano arrangements of our own. So do you have maybe some pieces that you think you would be particularly suited, but that you don't feel like doing, that maybe we can pick up the slack on, or maybe some pitfalls that you potentially fell into in early arrangements, some difficulties that you can help us avoid?
Suren, it's a very difficult question. There's lots of music which probably quite suitable for solo piano arrangement or two piano arrangements. I have to think. It's not so easy, but no, I have to think about it. It's not that simple.
Yes. I look forward to getting to talk to you again in that case.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. We'll do.
All right. Well, I think we're just about ready to start the next part of our concert, which will be your arrangement of Stravinsky's Firebird. So thank you so much for spending time with us and talking to us about the piece today. And we're looking forward to playing it, especially the end of the Infernal Dance, which is very, very difficult.
It is, yeah. But it's partly my fault. I mean, because of Sedgwick, partly it's Stravinsky's fault. So I wish you success.
Thank you very much. Thank you all so much for listening to us this afternoon. Do you want to stand up?
Yes.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time this afternoon, this evening, from wherever you are joining us today. It's been a pleasure to perform for you from Venturing Hills Concert Studio. Again, I would just like to say a big thank you to the technical team that made today's performance possible. First of all, Becke, working the picture that you saw, and Ross Murray, who put together the sound that you heard. And a big thank you to Dakota Martin, our page turner for this afternoon. If you would like to see Pontiac Enchante again, we're back here the weekend of November 21st and 22nd. I'm going to be playing a cello and piano recital with Paul Marlen, professor of cello at Ottawa University here. We're playing a program of British music, music by Ralph Vaughan Williams, Frank Bridge, and Benjamin Britten. So see you here November 21st and 22nd. For now, stay healthy, stay safe, and looking forward to welcoming as many people back to this studio in person as possible very soon. Thank you.